I'm so excited that you're here because the fact that you're here shows that you care about having an amazing relationship and an amazing life. I'm your host, Marchant Johnson, and I'm so excited today to welcome back a returning guest who's here by popular request, and that is Marc Katz. Welcome, Evan.
Thank you for having me back, Michelle. I really appreciate it.
So happy to have you here, and I'm really excited about our conversation today.
Yeah, this is always fun. I look forward to putting my foot in my mouth over and over and over again.
Okay, well, great. So before we get started into what I know will be a fun and juicy conversation, I just want to share a little more formal introduction with those of the women out there in our audience. So billed as a personal trainer for smart, strong, successful women, dating coach Marc Katz has been helping singles since 2003. He is the author of 4 books, most recently Believe in Love, and has been featured in hundreds of media outlets, including Today, the New York Times, and CNN. In 2016, his blog got nearly 10 million readers. I couldn't read my own writing. And he also created Love You, a comprehensive 6-month video curriculum to help women understand men and find love. Evan's Love You podcast launched in 2016 and has already had over 500,000 downloads. And I was sharing, ladies, with Evan that I really admire and respect his work. I know that he is someone who has spent a lot of time and has created very powerful tools and resources to help women on their journey to love. And I really respect him. So I'm really happy to have the privilege of having him here with us. Thanks again, Evan.
Again, and now I just have to live up to my billing.
Exactly.
My self-written bio, I have to live up to that.
There you go. There you go. So to get started today, Evan, I think it would be really valuable for you to share a little bit about your own personal journey to love. I know you're a happily married man with children now, as well as doing this wonderful work that you do in the world. And I also know that your journey, like mine, was not the easiest or smoothest one. But I think it would be valuable for you to share a little bit about it because I want to give the women that are listening here some insights into the male perspective and some of the things that go on the male journey to love.
Sure. Listen, as you said, I've been doing this for 14 years now. And when I started it, my blog was called Advice from a Single Dating Expert. Who knows more about dating than a guy who's still dating? That was the billing. That was the only card I could play because I hadn't figured it out. I was doing the best I could. And I like to think I was giving good advice. If my wife left me tomorrow, it would mean all my advice had gone bad. It would just mean my wife left me. I'm not counting on that, by the way. So most people who are in this industry come by it honestly. They come by it because they're looking for something. It's not a surprise that people who had mental health issues become shrinks, and there's usually some sort of personal journey inherent in anybody who ends up giving dating and relationship advice. So I was no different. I was always looking for love, always wanted to be married with children, little league dad. I mean, I wanted to be like my dad, and I come from a very functional, happy background. And I struggle, not in a different way than a lot of my clients struggle, because I never found dating to be hard. Hard is the wrong word. It was frustrating that it was hard to find the person that I thought would be my wife. But I managed to have fun along the way. It didn't take the same emotional toll on me that it takes on a lot of people. And I guess I'm sort of naturally an optimist, which makes me a relatively good messenger for why one should keep dating, even though there's a lot of failure involved. I went out with 300 people from 2000 to 2000 and whenever I met my wife, 8, 7. So that's a lot of people. And that's online dating where that's always possible. I was more likely to break up with someone in 2 dates if I didn't see a future. I would never stay in a relationship for 2 years just because it was there, because I was always on the wife hunt. So I went through a lot, and soon I was giving advice that I wasn't following. You can only hide your own hypocrisy from yourself for so long. And I was noticing the things that I was saying to clients over the phone. I was once a dating coach for both men and women. We'll get into that later, but 80% of my clients were women. I didn't ask for that. That's just what happened. And when I realized my hypocrisy, I started to make different decisions when it came to love. And successively, each girlfriend that I had got better, like closer and closer to the goal, until I dated someone for 8 months who was really wonderful. I chose not to marry her. She was younger, 10 years younger, and I needed more of a peer. And 6 months later, I met my wife, who was a lot like my ex-girlfriend, just 13 years older than her. Mm-hmm. And I needed a woman. I got, again, I'd say I got lucky, because I think my wife is super. She's the type O wife. I think any man can marry her and be happy. But it wasn't just luck. I created my own luck. I learned from my mistakes. I kept on going. And in so doing, I learned to essentially, for smart, strong, successful women, to reverse engineer everything that I did and give people a very clear path if you struggle. Because there's very few things that I haven't seen as a single guy or as a dating coach for 14 years. So I've tried to create these sort of comprehensive programs that address every single concern women are going to have, soup to nuts, so that it's like I'm holding your hand on this journey and you can't fall. And that's why I joke about being the personal trainer at the gym. I can't lift the weights for you, but I can be there to keep you motivated, keep you supported, keep your spirits up, give you perspective, right? And I basically refuse to let people quit. I refuse to let people fail, because it's always worth it. It only takes one person. So, I'm ridiculously happily married. I don't know any guy who talks about his wife the way I talk about my wife. And it's partially because of what I do. I am extremely appreciative. And because I'm living that dream, I believe other people can. And that's sort of my mission, is make sure everybody gets the same thing that I have, which is a marriage that buoys me and makes me happy. And I feel 100% accepted, and I never have to change for a partner. Just being myself is good enough. And there's a lot of love and appreciation. It's unconditional. Nothing could really shake the foundation of our relationship. And when people hear that and they think it's impossible because they've never had a taste of it, that we're not going to do anything to change your past, but your past isn't necessarily your future. You can make different decisions. I made different decisions. The woman I married was nothing like the woman I was looking for most of my life. And that's a big part of the narrative, is sometimes we're conditioned to bark up the wrong tree perpetually. And if we don't know it's the wrong tree, we're going to keep on barking.
Right. Yeah, so I appreciate you sharing a little bit about your own journey, because I do think it's a message of hope. And I think there's some important things there also that we can highlight a little more, as far as what it's really like to be a man out there dating. We're speaking to women, but the reason I'd like for you to speak to this in a little bit more detail, and I know we're lumping men all into one group here, but the reason I'd like for you to speak to this is that I think a lot of women understand what it's like for them to date, for them to want to find love, for them to desire a relationship or partnership. I don't always know that we're really deeply tapped into what that experience is like for a man.
Of course not. Of course not. Would you participate with me instead of allowing me to do this all myself? Would you engage? Okay.
Sure.
In your experience, or your experience running these summits, what's it like for a woman to date? Your words, right? Her pain, her frustration. What's her experience?
Frustrating, can create a lot of anxiety. It can be a lot of disappointment, some loneliness, some sadness. And I'm talking from a woman who married at age 43 for the first time, right? So I dated for decades. Not feeling like I know how to find the right person. feeling like I'm trying to fit a square peg into a round hole, trying to make something work that probably isn't meant to work. For me, there was fear. I felt fear of being alone, of not ultimately finding what I wanted, because that was a really deep desire for me that I'd had my entire life. And so there was fear and sadness around the idea that I might not find that. And it was so frustrating to me, Evan, because I thought I'm succeeding so well in other areas of my life. Like my career was going well. My life work was going well. I considered myself to be a reasonably attractive and intelligent person. And yet, for whatever reason, I felt like I was beating my head against the wall in this area of my life. And I couldn't figure out why until I got some additional outside support. And I tried everything. I mean, I literally read over 125 books. I love dating, relationships, men, women, communication, etc. within it like a 18-month period of time. So I was serious about this. I wasn't like not trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
So to say that that was frustrating for me is an understatement.
And that explains how you got here. Thank you for sharing that story. So if that's one woman's experience, right, and it's somewhat of a universal experience, and we just put on our logic hat, not our emotion hat, just our logic hat, wouldn't it stand to reason that a decent 43-year-old marriage-oriented guy would feel the exact same way? A person who's just normal, who wants to be in love, has emotions, right? And again, it's the same experience, right? All the people I like don't like me in return. All the people who like me, I don't like. It's just called dating. It's not something that's just indigenous to women. It is everybody who's single can say, everybody I like doesn't want me.
Right.
Everybody who wants me, I don't want.
Right.
That's how you end up single. Right. So when you date men, you see them as the other. Right? They're the ones who hurt you, therefore they become the enemy. Instead of, we're all human beings, we're all scrambling around, trying to figure out what works, not knowing what's in our blind spots, doing the best we can, having false beliefs about the world, ineffective dating practices, but somewhere inside, good to the core, flawed, insecure, sure. Mm-hmm. But when women stop seeing men as people, it becomes like politics, where you sort of demonize the other side entirely, to the point where we sort of discredit anything they say as if they're not people with feelings. And I won't even take a political stance about that, but we see it a lot. Yeah. Where people just see, oh, it's the other side, and you know what they say about the other side, and you check off your list. And is that list partially true? Yes. Is it totally true? Never. Ever.
Right.
Never totally true. And so I would love to live in a world where men better understood women. Right? Dating would be much better if men understood your story. Right? Because it is important. Dating can become impersonal. Men do look for sex prior to finding love. They're interested in sex first, and they'll figure out the love thing later. That's true. That doesn't change because we want it to. So I would love to live in a world where men desired self-growth, where they said, you know what, I'd really like to understand my partner better. But that's not the world in which we live. And I can't make that happen, and you can't make that happen. So given those limitations, given the limitations of the opposite sex, and there are limitations, do we really think that there's no good men? Really? That's more than vaguely insulting to an entire gender, to assume that every guy is a dog or a pig or an emotional infant or, innately more selfish than you are. Right? So the way I see dating is most people are not your spouse. Right? And we got to stop being surprised at that. Right? Failure in dating is predictable. In fact, it's the most predictable thing. Right? It would be like being in Seattle and saying, I can't believe it's cloudy all the time.
Right.
That's what happens when you live in Seattle, right? You don't get to rewrite the rules because you want better sunshine in Seattle. So if this is dating as we all experience it, how are we going to navigate it with more power, confidence, self-awareness, integrity? Instead of, I hate men, I hate my city, I hate online dating, I give up, which doesn't further the goal of falling in love and having someone have your back unconditionally. You never reach that goal if you pull up short because you can't take it anymore. Part of the reason you can't take it anymore is you don't even see the way out. And that's where people like myself and the other people that you're interviewing in this series have some value. Because you may have 10, 20 years of dating experience. You may have gone on 100 online dates. But if you still can't figure out what kind of man is good and what kind of man is not good, there's some work to do. Right? And mostly when people come to me and say, oh, you're giving men a free pass, I'm not giving men a free pass. I'm just not a coach for men. It'd be like asking some meat blogger to write about vegetables. I'm a coach for women, and so I help women adjust, right? But I'm never saying men couldn't stand to change. I'm just saying you can't facilitate change in entire gender. That's not our responsibility. So women don't have to change. That's a false narrative that people like me or mansplainers telling women to change. It's not true at all. You have to change your choice of men, maybe, but you don't have to change who you are at your core, right? But if you forgive all the weird mixed metaphors, but if you're eating a food and that food keeps making you sick, you should probably stop eating that food.
Right.
And the problem is it's a certain kind of food. It's not all food. You're not going to go on a hunger strike. It's not all men. It's the men that you've chosen. So one of my sort of favorite sayings is you don't attract the wrong men. A lot of women think they're bad man magnets. You don't attract the wrong men. You accept the wrong men. You put up with way too much bullshit for way too long, and then you blame men. No, that's the guy you chose. Choose a different guy, you're going to have a different experience. Each one is a completely new roll of the dice. Now, if you're attracted to one type of guy who is avoidant, non-committal, selfish, terrible communicator, anger issues, alcohol issues, well, that's only reflective of those men. It's not reflective of me or my happily married friends. So there's plenty of good guys out there that are unexplored. There's as many men out there as there are women. And that's why, despite all the complaints about all this stuff, pretty much everybody who wants to get married eventually gets married.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Very few people are left standing alone for the rest of their life. But it's a journey, and it's not a quick and linear one. You don't go online, choose a husband in 30 days, and get out. Right? And anybody who has false expectations about how easy it should be is going to be set up for disappointment. You got to look at this as a marathon, not a sprint, and put on some comfortable shoes because it might be a while. If you wear uncomfortable shoes, you're going to have an uncomfortable experience. And I think that's most people. I try to prepare people for that marathon, even though they want the sprint. Nobody wants to become good at dating. Nobody wants to go through a lot of people in order to find the one, but that's sort of the only way unless you get super lucky. And that's like winning the lottery. You can't teach winning the lottery. And so I just try to teach people for the journey and make sure that they have the best possible experience in spite of the flaws of dating relationships, men, online dating, and trying to see the good in men rather than focusing on the bad. You wouldn't want a world where men focused on all of the weaknesses of women. You wouldn't want me to outline all the weaknesses of women in general. I've had women do that at my retreats. They've made a list of like 30 things that they don't like about women. They did the same for men. They did the men's list faster. Yeah. If you ask women to describe other women, right, you hear some pretty rough, harsh descriptions, self-descriptions that any man would validate. So there's a whole cadre of men out there who believe the worst in women. Right? Are those the guys you want to date? Mm-hmm. That's what people are in danger of becoming. Right? When it becomes men are this, men are the problem. It's it's limited and it's demonizing and it's unhealthy and it's untrue, right? And so in one breath, you can validate someone's pain. I completely understand why people feel the way they do. That's not wrong to say, hey, I've been hurt by men. Well, yes, that's because you date men. If you dated women, you know who the culprit would be? Women.
Yeah.
I got a friend here in LA. He's 45 and single. He desperately wants to get married and have kids. And he is cute and he is successful and he is sensitive. Right? He's probably too picky. I'll grant him that. But for the most part, he tells me about some of the dates he goes on and my head spins. He's having a really, really rough time out there. And he really wants to be a husband and father. All of his friends are married with kids. Right? And this is someone I'm very close to. Right? And I had breakfast with him the other day, and he's telling me his stories. And boy, you sit down with him, you'll get very present to the idea that this isn't a man-woman thing. This is a people thing. There's a lot of people who are just incapable of kindness, consistency, people who have contradictory desires, people who claim to want love but don't know how to receive it. And we just have to get away from the judgment of it all. And I say, in my Believe in Love book, I say it's like putting on a pair of shoes. If the shoe doesn't fit, you don't get angry at your foot. You don't give up on shoes. You're just trying another pair. And there's just a lot of shoes out there that don't fit. And it doesn't mean there has to be any anger or even much emotion tied up in it. Oh, it's just another shoe that doesn't fit. Next. And when you start cycling through people, next, just another shoe that doesn't fit. It makes the one when it does fit, you're like, wow, this is really comfortable. I wouldn't have necessarily taken it off the rack, but now that it's on, I like it. And I don't know about you, Michelle, but that was largely my dating experience as well. Mm-hmm. Very frustrating to not find my wife and wonder what was wrong with me. I wrote an article for Match.com when I was 34 called Last Single Guy Standing, right? Same emotions that you had, right? A little bit younger at the time, but I'd already been through a lot.
Yeah.
This is pretty universal stuff. And no one gets anywhere by getting angry over things that you can't control. Because it is like getting angry at traffic or weather, or it's powerless over it. So you're powerless over some divorced guy whose mom really messed him up good when he was 8 and is still carrying it out on women. Right? Once you see that, just run in the opposite direction. Don't spend 2 years trying to fix him. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I've been talking for about 30 minutes straight, so I'm going to take a breath. But that's my speech on why I think women should see men as equal participants in this struggle to find the one person who's going to really dig you for the rest of your life.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that's really powerful about this is I think you're promoting some compassion. And I really believe that that's something really that we could all perhaps apply a little bit more to what we might call the other, as you called it, to recognize from a place of compassion some of the struggles that a lot of men might be going through.
Sure.
When my husband and I got married, he was 38 and he was marrying for the first time. And I know he had his own struggle. It was different than mine in some respects, but he had his own struggle and challenges on the way to love too. And yet we really believe, and I'm sure you can relate to this, we really believe that it created all of that dating and all of those experiences created an opportunity for us to recognize, because we were really clear at that point about what we really wanted or didn't want or what was going to be a good fit for us. And it has helped us to really appreciate and value what we have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You can't do this job without going home and being like, wow, I love you. I'm a very, very appreciative husband also for this work that I do. And I see everybody's struggles every day. And if anybody, is a marriage skeptic or a long-term love skeptic, married couples aren't happy anyway, that kind of stuff. We're not comparing ourselves to unhappy couples. Compare yourself to happy couples. Name one happy married couple who would trade places with their single friend. There isn't one, which is not to demonize single people at all. All my clients are single people, right? But all I'm trying to say is that there is a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, right? There's a point to all this, right? If you want that, if you choose to be single for the rest of your life, it's perfectly fine. I don't know why you're here, but there's no judgment. It's whatever makes you happy. But the problem is people compare. They basically say, would I rather be single and alone without the capacity for a man to hurt me, or would I rather be insecure in a miserable relationship? And they've created those two as the only choices because that's all they've experienced. It's, I'd rather be alone and not get hurt than to be with some guy who hurts me. And they forgot about the other choice, which is the happy one. Right? And that's what we're aiming for.
Right. Right. Yeah, I like what we're creating here today because I like the message of hope and I like the message of empowerment. Because as long as we're seeking for the reason that we're stuck or feeling stuck in our love lives or not having the results we want in our love lives as being out there somewhere, whether it be blaming men or blaming our city, state, town, or country, whatever we might be looking for out there, then that's completely out of our control and it's not very empowering. It makes you want.
No, it's completely powerless. Mm-hmm. One could pick up and move cities, but you're just going to be the same person in a different city, different set of men. The idea that there's this one place where all the quality, relationship-oriented, successful, sensitive men are hanging out. Where do I go? What website do I use? What place does a 45-year-old divorced mom in Cincinnati go? There's not. It defies an answer. So dating and relationship coaching isn't where are they? It's ultimately who am I being that is attractive to the opposite sex. And any guy who struggles with women would have to ask the same question. Remember, this is not a gender thing. I'm only talking to women, but if you know, I just told you, one of my closest friends, you know, he's 45 and single. If he asked me why he was single, his answer might be women in Los Angeles are crazy. My answer might be you're still barking up the wrong tree. You're still valuing traits that aren't as important as you think they are. And you're sort of choosing yourself out of your options. And by the way, both could be true. There might be a disproportionate number of selfish, crazy women in LA. I'm not going to say there are. I haven't dated anywhere else. But there might be. But who cares? Even if that is true, what are you going to do? Right? He has to adjust. He has to say, okay, well, you know, I'm going to have to let go of the idea that, you know, I'm going to date someone who's the same religion or the same political bent as me. Or maybe she's already going to be a single mom and is going to have her own kids because I'm 45 and, you know, it'll be harder for me to date a 30-year-old who doesn't have kids. And like, there's adjustments that everybody has to make over time. And a lot of people arrive at those adjustments on their own. And they're not dating and relationship coaches. They're happily married people. I can almost guarantee you, talk to, you know, anybody here to talk to their most happily married couple friends and just ask them about their relationship. Right? What drives it? Maybe they've never even thought about it, but just ask them about their relationship and why it works, and you will be inspired.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so part of what we are, I think we're saying here, or more specifically you're saying here, is that there's hope and that you can create more opportunity for yourself. You have more power over what happens in this area of your life than you might have thought up to this point. Much more.
And we're not going to, you know, it's not the free offer today, but this is all that Believe in Love is about. It's a 7-step process, walking people through the pits of despair back into a more hopeful, optimistic, proactive mindset when it comes to dating. You know, using some of these same arguments, just very, very logical, kind of removing the emotion from it. Dating can be very emotional. It can feel very personal. And the hard part is that it's not. We've all had the experience of rejecting someone really nice, not for any reason, not for anything they did wrong. We wouldn't want that person to get upset or hate themselves or hate us or quit dating. Just, he's a nice guy. He's not for me. Everybody's had that happen. Mm-hmm. It's going to happen to you too. It's happened to me. I've been rejected more times than most people have been rejected because I I'm a long-term optimist. I have confidence, and I could take it. I could bounce back from it. Those are necessary traits. You can't let failure beat you, because remember, in dating, everything's a failure until the one that's a success. It's good to be 99% failure. You reject him, he rejects you somewhere before marriage, right? This one relationship is supposed to last forever, which means by default, every relationship before that is supposed to fail.
Mm-hmm.
So how could we be so surprised by failure?
Yeah. Yeah, so that's a really good reframe, because I think part of the reason why it becomes so painful or so difficult to keep going is because we feel like we're stacking failure upon failure upon failure, when in reality we're learning, we're growing, we're developing, we're evolving as a human being. And
are they better failures? That's the question I would have. Is each relationship a progression from the last one? Are these men nicer, more grounded, more consistent? Do you have a lower tolerance for poor behavior and get rid of guys instead of staying with them when you're unhappy?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And there's nothing wrong with being alone for a period of time while you're looking for a guy to treat you well. I would rather you be alone and go on one new date with a guy each week than to be in a relationship where you're unhappy but you don't think you could do better. Mm-hmm. So there's nothing wrong with being single. There's nothing wrong with rejecting guys relatively quickly when you don't like how you're being treated or how you feel in the relationship. Right? That gives you freedom to choose. Right? To me, the only things you can't do are A, quit, and B, stay in a relationship where you're unhappy. Those are the only things you can't do. Yeah. Everything else is fine. And most of the people that I know, most of the clients, their marriage was the culmination of years and years of broken relationships. Right? My wife has even told me the story. Like, she trained like 3 guys to be husbands. Like, after her, they got married the next one after that. That's right. A pretty common story.
Right.
It's part of the evolution. Right? When you get closer and closer and closer to your goal. Oh, I learned from this man that I need a guy who's financially stable. I'm never going to do that again. Okay. I learned from this man that I need someone who is consistent. He was just remarkably inconsistent. I never knew where I stood with him. Okay. So you find these things that you can't live without from your failures of the past. And then you just make sure you get all of those things in one package, and congratulations, you have a husband.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this comes back to what I believe, and I want to see what your take is on this, that I believe that often for women, the key is not to lower your standards. You hear this, you hear women say, being too picky, do I need to lower my standards? I think the answer in most cases is not to lower your standards, but to actually raise your standards or elevate your standards or stay true to your standards about how you want to be treated and how you're going to be treating someone else. Even raise your standards for who you're being and showing up as in the world. And I'm not talking about raise your standards as far as he has to be the perfect 10 if you're not the perfect 10. I'm talking about the heart and character qualities that you possess and that you want your ideal partner to possess. Because I believe in the long run, that's what lays the foundation for a happy relationship.
You're saying something that I say in my web. I've got a webinar called how you could stop wasting time on the wrong man and finally choose your husband. And there's an exercise in there. We call it attractive versus important. The things that you compromise on are the things that are attractive. You don't compromise on the things that are important. So attractive might be 6'2", but there's no evidence this 6'2" man is a better husband. It just means it's what you're attracted to. You might be attracted to a guy who's a good dancer, but good dancing never saved a marriage. Right? So there's plenty of room for compromise. And someone will say, well, you're telling me to settle. No, I'm telling you to compromise. That's different than settling. Settling, obviously, if you're miserable, then it was a poor compromise. No one's telling you to do something that you don't want to do. Right? But people compromise all the time on character-based traits because they refuse to compromise on the attractive traits. So they find their 6'2" millionaire, tall, dark, handsome, charismatic, funny, charming, right? and they will not move on it. Well, I dated a guy like that. How could I go out with a guy who's less than that? Well, that guy cheated on you like 3 times and verbally abused you and made you feel like shit about yourself. And so you're just thinking you're going to date that guy again, but he's going to be the nicer version of it. But you discovered he's not that much of a nicer version. He's a workaholic and his work comes first. He's not verbally abusive. It's just he only sees you once every 2 weeks. And so people get stuck and fixated on, but I've dated guys who are more attractive. I've dated guys who are more intelligent. I've dated guys who are more successful. I'm not compromising on those things, right? And yet those are the very things that one should be able to compromise on, right? Where if you compromise on character, consistency, communication, kindness, selflessness, you're screwed. I could hand you the perfect man. If he's missing those qualities, you got nothing. So it's not about holding out for this avatar that you've created in your head, the composite of all great qualities. Of course, that's attractive. But there's not many men like that. And a lot of the men that you will discover who are like that have deep-seated flaws that make them incompatible partners. Mm-hmm. So anytime I say this to someone, I'll get pushback and I'll just let her know. Every happily married person I know compromised. I don't know anybody who didn't compromise. Mm-hmm. Not one person. My wife included. She made compromises. I made compromises. But at core, even if both of us have dated taller, thinner, younger, more attractive, more impressive people, neither of us have ever dated nicer people, better people, more honest people, more dedicated to the unit of family. We have no doubts. And so there's not really many chinks in our armor. Even if we could objectively say, well, of course, the guy my wife dated before me was 6'7" and 10 years younger than her. I can't compete with that. Right? But who cares? She chose me.
Yeah.
So what'd she gain? What'd she give up?
Yeah. Well, and I think sometimes when women hear what you just said, I think part of what might be triggering for them is they think, well, he's saying I don't have to be attracted to the guy. That's not what you
never said that once.
I know.
People hear things that I don't say.
Right.
Never said that once.
Right. But I think, part of, at least for me, what makes my husband so attractive is who he is. And I am attracted to him. Is he the absolute best looking guy I ever dated? No.
That would be weird.
He's not. But to me, he's amazing. And I'm so attracted to him in large part because of who he is.
And there's a visceral attraction that people think, oh, I have to give that up. And no one's saying that either. Right. This is all the definition of insanity. If the way you've been approaching dating, right? I think of myself in my 20s, and it's literally anybody who was attractive I was interested in. There was no regard to any other quality. It was just she was attractive and I was on it like a moth to a flame. It's not a strategy for dating, is just going with the person who's the most attractive and hoping things work out. I sure hope he turns out to be a nice person. Right? You can't be driven by attraction. Attraction will just get you in the door. So attraction is a baseline. You need it to start. So anybody who thinks I'm saying don't be attracted to someone, no. Are you going to be the most attracted to your husband as you could be to anybody on the planet? Nope, you will not. And if that sounds like settling to you, you need to redefine settling, because it's not. I honestly don't know a single guy on the planet who thinks his wife is the most attractive person he's ever dated. Not one. And that's shocking. I've written about this and women across the internet have yelled at me. I didn't make this up. I'm telling you, I'm reporting. It is not a prerequisite for men to think their wife is the best looking woman he's ever dated. Right? He wants someone who is going to make his life easier at the end of the day, who appreciates him, who accepts him, who admires him, who doesn't constantly criticize him and tell him how bad he is and how many things he needs to change. That's what he's looking for in a partner. Right? Whether she's the hottest person ever, that's a bonus. And most people don't get that bonus. So to hold out for that is a foolish dating strategy. To hold out for the tallest, richest, smartest, hottest, all in one package. Because I can tell you, I am not as smart as Steve Jobs, and I'm not as funny as Louis C.K., and I'm not as cute as Channing Tatum. but Channing Tatum, and my wife is still happy, remarkably. And we can acknowledge all of that is true. That's important to just understand where you fall on the spectrum of things. I'm a pretty good guy and I'm a pretty good husband, but I could tell you people that I know who are more everything than I am, right? So no one has to be delusional. You have to be really insecure to think that someone needs to think you are the most anything. So someone is going to listen to your interview and be like, do you hear the way Michelle insulted her husband? Right? He's not the most attractive man. It's not an insult. Facts are not insults. I don't even know how to spin it if someone lives in that world.
Yeah.
Because that's driven by insecurity. Because secure couples spend zero time thinking about how they compare to everybody else in the world. I've never gone to a party where I'm the best looking guy. Ever. So that invariably means someone at any party is going to be more attractive.
Yeah.
So what am I going to do about that? Yeah. Insist that my wife lie to me? Insist that she never have eyes for anybody else or never dated anybody else in the past? These are all insecurities, right? So it doesn't matter how it looks to other people. My original list, I was looking for someone who was the equivalent of me. This is what we all do. We're all narcissists. We want to date the opposite sex version of themselves. So I'm East Coast Jewish, liberal, Ivy League, ambitious, driven, opinionated. It's all sort of very obvious, right? And I was looking for that in a woman. 10 years later, I discovered that wasn't really what I was looking for. I'm attracted to that. I will always be attracted to that. Those women are my clients. But we don't pair that well together. Too much alike. I needed someone who was a complement. Right? Yeah. That's who my wife is. So yeah. Did I compromise on her? Sure. Am I happier than any guy I know? Yeah. Would I trade my wife for one of those women who's more impressive? Not in a million years.
Yeah.
So that's important to say that because people tend to engage in black and white thinking, right? I say compromise, you hear settle, right? I say he might not be the person you're the most attracted to in the world. You think you're going to have to get drunk and put a bag over his head to kiss him. And it's not how it works. It's not how it works at all. You need to have attraction. You need to have a good sex life to have a happy marriage. No one's suggesting otherwise. Right. But if you're going to compromise on height versus emotional stability, compromise on height.
Yeah, that's a good way to just summarize that piece. And ladies, just in case any of you did have that thought that I insulted my husband, I just want to make it clear that I think he is amazing and I'm so grateful for him and I admire, respect, and love him so much. But I learned what Evan was just talking about, that the most important things were about who he was and who I am when I am with him. And we are definitely better together than we are apart. And we do complement each other because, like you said, Evan, we're different enough. We have different strengths and we have different capacities that we complement each other really nicely. And that's amazing. And I grew so much in my attraction to him. Not that I wasn't attracted to him originally, because I was, but I grew in attraction to him because of who he is, because I respect and admire him so much. And now I think he's like the cutest thing on two legs. But, we're just being real here. We're talking honestly. We're telling the truth.
I think it would be very dangerous to give dating and relationship advice that wasn't based on truth, and it was based on what people wanted to hear that just validated their feelings. And in a perfect world, and it's not a perfect world, no one can argue that it is. In a perfect world, you're perfect, everybody around you is flawed, and they all need to change. Right? But what is there to advise if you're perfect? And the real problem is everybody else in the world. And you don't need to change. You don't need to become more self-aware. You don't need to become more confident. You don't need to become more sexy. You don't need to become more of a trusting girlfriend. Right? These are the things that are within your control. Only. And I think that's not gender specific. I would say the same exact thing if I was talking to men. Right? Men who blame women for their failures. And there's plenty of them. right? Oh my God, I'm so sick of Match.com. All these women, they lie about their weight and their height, and they're crazy, and they're on Zoloft, and they're gold diggers. And just listen, right? What would you say to that guy? All right. How far is that attitude taking him? It doesn't mean that his experience is untrue. His experience is actually valid, and that's why we should have some sympathy for him. But complaining about what's wrong with the opposite sex, demonizing all women because of his experience with some of them, it's just a losing strategy. It's not healthy, it's not true, it's not attractive, and it's hard because that is his experience, right? So how do we provide validation for however you got here today? Whatever you've discovered is wrong with dating, relationships, and men is partially true. It's just never fully true. And the other side is, right, it's the glass half full as opposed to the glass half empty. And when you have people who are trying to provide this advice, we're coming from a half full place. You're not going to find many people who don't believe in love who give good relationship advice.
Right. Yeah, I really love our conversation today, Evan, because I think it's been real, and I think it's been encouraging, and I think it's been hopeful. And I'm hoping that those that are listening are feeling that way as well. And Evan, I really want to thank you today. I've really enjoyed our conversation, and I appreciate you generously sharing. I want to give you a chance also to just leave us with kind of a last piece, a last bit of wisdom.
Listen, if I get a little hot and bothered or sound evangelical, it's because I am. It's hard to have a happy marriage, advocate for other people having a happy marriage, and then deal with so much naysaying. I have a Facebook page with 70,000 people on it, and it seems like half the people on there, all they want to tell me is how much men suck. I understand. It's just, yeah, and what are we going to do about that? We're going to stop dating those men. That's the answer. You can't be treated any way that you don't allow yourself to be treated. So it's a lot of turnover. It's a lot of next. But there's always a good guy out there who has no idea that you exist, right? And what are you going to present to him? Same as what is he going to present to you that's going to make you attracted to him? We're all attracted to optimism. We're all attracted to confidence. We're all attracted to kindness. These are good traits. And when you find a man who's insecure, bitter, unkind, pessimistic, you're not going to go for that guy. So all we're doing is turning that same thing around and saying, I understand why you might be frustrated, bitter, pessimistic. It comes with dating. There's nothing unusual, but you got to be able to shake that off, erase the Etch-a-Sketch, get back out there, and treat each new guy as a new roll of the dice. He has nothing to do with the previous guy or previous men who've hurt you. And so I just want to be a stand and an advocate for the idea of gender equality. Men and women are not the same. We're different, but we are equal, and our experiences are both equally valid. We can't come through the lens that half the population is good and the other half of the population is bad. It's dangerous, and it's not going to help you get what you want in the long run. So Michelle's got the link below. I'll give you free stuff, more free stuff than anybody on the internet, newsletters and blog posts and podcasts, all for free to help you understand men and find love. And again, thank you for the opportunity to be here and spread this message of optimism.
Thank you very much, Evan. Really appreciate your time and your wisdom and generosity today. And I also want to thank each of you for being here with us. I honor you for your presence and hope that we'll see you for more. Bye-bye for now.